In the end, it's Arsenal who advance to the final 8 on penalties. For more on this, we welcome in Gab Marcotti. We're hearing from Gab in a moment. Craig, how do we get to this?
Well, over the two legs, Arsenal could not find the kind of form they have found in the Premier League, and maybe for various reasons. One, the pressure of the Champions League, and two, Porto gave a sterner test to some of the garbage, let's be honest, that are down near the bottom of English Premier League and who have sort of been rolled over, the likes of Sheffield United and others. And I think, you know, the physicality of Porto, the experience they have in this competition, and they made it really difficult for Arsenal. And for Arsenal's point of view, I don't think in either game they really found that mojo or momentum that we have seen in the domestic league, where they've been absolutely fantastic recently. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have been playing out of their skin, arguably up until that Liverpool performance at the weekend against City, arguably had been playing the best football. But we did not see that over 180 minutes. But a win's a win. Doesn't matter how you do it. But play like that against the better sides in this competition, they'll go out.
And I think that's the point for Mikel Arteta and Arsenal, that this has to be a learning experience and understanding that it's going to take a whole lot more in order to make a deeper run in this competition. What we saw from Arsenal today, and really in the first leg as well, is that they never actually match their level of play. They never play like the Arsenal that we're used to seeing. The speed of the game was slower. The possession was slower. A lot of sideways and back, not enough verticality in the game, not enough trying to get in behind Pepe, not enough trying to exploit the lack of speed in that back line from Porto, not enough of challenging Porto defensively, and a lot of it from Arsenal became very predictable. And so, yeah, to the point that Craig was making, the know-how and the experience of Porto shows up and said, we're going to slow it down. We're going to foul. We're going to take the rhythm out of the game. And the onus and the responsibilities on you, Arsenal, to speed it up, to find the rhythm, to try to challenge us defensively, and they never really did that. It was really surprising in the extra time how much actually in the first 15 minutes of the extra time that Porto had the ball. Porto was the team that actually was keeping possession and taking the game forward. Not with a whole lot of danger, not with a whole lot of purpose, but we didn't see enough of Arsenal truly pushing Porto. And that's not just true for the first 15 minutes of the extra time. We just didn't see the best version of Arsenal. If indeed they're going to go deeper in this competition, they have to get better.
Why didn't we see it? Was it just because it was the Champions League, because it was Porto, because of the experience? Because you looked at like Saka had a stinker today.
Well, it's the Champions League knockout stages. These teams are better. Whether we think Porto are ever, capable of going and winning it or whatever, these teams are better than, most teams in the Premier League, right? Not obviously you've got the top guys spending the big bucks, but not who Arsenal are facing sort of most weeks. When you look at, outside of the top 7 or 8, Porto are a sterner test than that. They're more experienced. They've got some good players, and they know how to game manage. So, and on top of that, there's the expectation that this Arsenal side, let's be honest, although they haven't been over the course in this competition, certainly this group of players, there's an expectation that they could be good enough to really give everyone a test in this competition this year. So there is a pressure on this Arsenal side, and yeah, they did find it difficult. And I have to give Porto a lot of credit. When you look at how Arsenal have played domestically, when the fact that they've beaten Liverpool, they've beaten City this season, a lot of people's favourites to go on and win are certainly strong favourites. Porto have given them a real test over 180 minutes plus the extra time. So
210 minutes.
All right, good math, Dan.
So I give them a lot of credit. And look, Arsenal, they're in the hat. They got away with one to a certain extent. Penalties, it can obviously go anyway.
Yep.
You can't argue with that. But Mikel Arteta knows that they will need to play better now that they're in the quarterfinals.
Gab, are you surprised this match over the two legs played out in the way that it did?
I am surprised because, let's not forget, I take on point Porto a big European name, but this is not a team that's having a good season, right? Earlier in the season, the fans actually attacked a car that Sergio Conceição and his son were in. That's how angry they were. We're used to them being first or second in the Portuguese league. That's not the case. They lost some big pieces over the summer. They had some, they had a couple starters missing, which is why you saw Tavio in there. In the end, this is a team with a small wage bill. and of course a 41-year-old, albeit Pepe, at the back. But I just think Conceição won the tactical battle over the two legs against a better opponent. And I think to some degree this is maybe on Arteta. I mean, I don't want to nitpick when you advance, but this has to be a learning opportunity for him too. You know, you have 5 subs, and yet you make your first substitution minute 83. I think that also sent the message that, hey, we're okay with penalties, which may explain why, you know, as Ali said, Porto looked better in extra time. These are all little things. I think this is a very young team that's going to grow. Porto, by the way, by no means an old team either, Pepe aside. So put these things together. Be happy that you advanced. Maybe you were the better team over the two legs, and use this information to help you be more effective in this two-legged format, whoever you face next.
But yeah, it was a tough night for Arsenal. There's no doubt about it. But quarterfinals, here we go, and their great season up to now rolls on.
And to the point of David Raya, though, I think he needed a moment like this. I think he's been looking. Maybe he won't say it, of course, in public, but he's been looking for that moment of validation that I was given an opportunity by Mikel Arteta, which at the time was a decision that we criticized. And now here I come in a big moment and are able to answer the call. Absolutely nothing to lose for David Raya in a penalty kick shootout or for the goalkeepers in general. I agree with that. But I do think that this is a big moment for him and one for Mikel Arteta that would say to himself, see, I told you, this guy was the answer all along. The truth of the matter is that, yes, David Raya came up with the saves today when it was needed, when Arsenal needed it the most, because they were just as close to going out than they were to advancing. So, yes, I think a big moment for David Raya and Arsenal overall.
Are Arsenal in the conversation to go all the way, Gab?
Honestly, I look at this and I say, why not? I mean, I think, I've said this before, not rocket science. Manchester City are the best team in the competition. Other than that, I think there's 4 or 5 teams that are comparable. And, you know, if at this stage, make the point after Bayern went through. At this stage last year, if I told you that, hey, look, Inter are going to be in the final, you know, you would have laughed so hard you would have fallen off your chair. Arsenal are a much, much better side. And, you know, looking at these odds, this seems reasonable. I might have Real Madrid ahead of them because I do think experience is a thing. And but to be honest, I think they're in that group with those 4 sides you see on the left-hand side, and Barcelona and probably Paris Saint-Germain as well.
Of course,
I
big
don't
names.
see why not. Yeah.
Big names, aren't they? But not big performances.
No, and look, things may change in the coming weeks. But we saw City at the weekend being rattled by a changed Liverpool side. Certainly not a full-strength Liverpool side. And they were, you know, at times hanging on, and they were rattled. And you can get at them. And the same with Bayern Munich. They won 8-1 at the weekend against Mainz, but we know they haven't been playing great this season. We know Real Madrid are getting results in the top of La Liga, but a lot of games have been a struggle. Now, they can turn it on in a heartbeat, Real Madrid. And Inter are strong, but they've got this huge game against Atleti tomorrow, which is close. It wasn't close in the first leg. It was close in terms of the result. It wasn't close in terms of the performance. It should have been dead and buried, but it's not, and that leaves it open to Atleti coming back in. But if you were Arsenal, nobody's going to stand up and say, OK, here it is. Yeah. But looking at the other teams, if Arsenal play at the top of their game, they're going to be at least extremely competitive against those sides, as Gab said, on that sort of favourite side of the list. So they should not fear anybody.
The common factor between those teams that you just mentioned is these are teams that will attack Arsenal, that are expected to carry the game, to carry the responsibility of the game. And I think that suits Arsenal a little bit better than playing against a team like Porto that sort of fell into the trap of slowing down the game. If you get in a back and forth with Real Madrid, yeah, you're going to take some chances because Vini Jr. will go on the counter and can hurt you. But guess what? You can hurt their back line too because Real Madrid is willing to commit numbers forward. And the same thing with Manchester City and the same thing certainly with Bayern Munich, who struggle in transition moments defensively. And so I think those are matchups that I wouldn't say favor Arsenal, but you can see a pathway by which Arsenal can take advantage of some of the frailties defensively of some of these big teams. I think they'd be uncomfortable playing against a team like Atletico Madrid, for example. That's a sort of challenge that it would be harder for them to figure out than the straight-up matchup against a team that they're very familiar with, like Manchester City.
Go on, Gab.
No, I just want to say, I think one of the keys between now and the end of the season, if Arsenal are going to win it, is assuming they stay in this three-way title race. I think he's got to get more out of his bench. Obviously, some of his injured players, like Thomas Partey, for example, are back. Gabriel Jesus recently returned. Because it does put a tremendous onus on you. And injuries do happen. We saw what Saliba's injury did to them last season. You know, he's found a comfortable lineup that's yielding results, but those guys aren't always going to be there. So I think it's going to be critical that he weaves his players in, he can get some rotation in there, and he gives himself some more options between now and the end of the campaign.